Hello, this is Teacher Marco from Phuket Pals, and welcome to this GD Social Studies screencast. Today, I would like to talk about the trench warfare in World War One. This is another video from in the series that I am making. So, if you find this video useful, please hit the subscribe button below, and also please don't forget to share and hit the like button as well. With that, it helps us help more people like you. So, why don't we begin? So, the trench warfare happened in World War One, of course, and this is a when we talk about the trench warfare. This is a type of fighting where both sides build deep trenches and as a defense against the enemy. So these trenches can stretch for many miles and make it nearly impossible for one side to advance. Because when you get out of the trench, there's a huge possibility that you will get shot. So during World War One, the Western Front in France was fought using the trench warfare. By the end of 1914, both sides had built a series of trenches that went from the North Sea and through Belgium and France. So as a result, neither side gained much ground for 3.5 years from October 1914 to March of 1918. So let's see how were the trenches built. So the trenches were dug by soldiers. Sometimes the soldiers dug the trenches straight into the ground. This method was called entrenching. It was fast but left the soldiers open to enemy fire while they were digging. Sometimes they would build the trenches by extending a trench on one end. This method was called sapping. It was safer, but took longer. And the most secret way to build a trench was to make a tunnel and then remove the roof when the tunnel was complete. So tunneling was the safest method, but also the most difficult. Imagine that you have to dig in a very tiny space with little air, all right? Little oxygen. So, what about no man's land? I sometimes hear this. So, what is no man's land? So, the no man's land is the land between the two enemy trench lines. This land was sometimes covered with barbed wire and landmines. So, the enemy trenches were generally around 50 to 250 yards apart. So, it's no man's land because no one's really walking there except for this guy on the picture. Alright, so what were the trenches like? So, the typical trench was dug around 12 feet deep into the ground. There was often an embankment at the top of the trench and a barbed wire fence. So, some trenches were reinforced with wood beams or sandbags, and the bottom of the trench was usually covered with wooden boards called duckboards. So the duckboards were meant to keep the soldiers' feet above water that would collect at the bottom of the trench. The trenches weren't dug in one long straight line, but were built as more of a system of trenches. So they were dug in a zigzag pattern, and there were many levels of trenches along the lines with paths dug so soldiers could travel between the levels. So, life in the trenches. If you take a look, this is a better version of the trench, right? This is actually a German trench. They look better. Okay, so life in the trenches. So, soldiers generally rotated through 3 stages of the front. They would spend some time in front line fighting, some of the time in the support trenches, like maybe running for supplies, and sometimes resting. They almost always had some sort of job to do, whether it was repairing the trenches, guard duty, moving supplies, undergoing inspections, or cleaning their weapons. Now, what about the conditions? The trenches were not nice or clean places. They were actually quite disgusting. There were all sorts of pests living in the trenches, including rats, lice, and frogs. The rats were everywhere and got into the soldiers' food and ate just about everything, including sleeping soldiers. So, whew, so bad. The lice were also a major problem. They made soldiers itch horribly and caused a disease called the trench fever. So the weather also contributed to rough conditions in the trenches. So rain caused the trenches to flood, as you can see in the picture, and get muddy. So mud could clog up weapons and make it hard to move in battle. Also, the constant moisture could cause an infection called the trench foot that, if untreated, could become so bad that a soldier's feet would have to be amputated. So cold weather was also dangerous, especially in the Eastern Front. So soldiers often lost fingers or toes due to frostbite, and some died from hypothermia or exposure in the cold. So as you can see, it was really a very bad condition in the trenches. Now, in our next video, I will talk about an event that happened in the trenches, so please stay tuned. Now, before we end this screencast, I would like to share to you another GED practice test question. Now, you will probably encounter a lot of this, like political cartoons on your GED test. So let's take a look. Which statement best reflects the main idea of the cartoon? So the technique that I would share to you is always look at the labels. All right, League of Nations, the hand, the world boycott is the bucket. This belligerent nation is shouting for war. So what do you think is the meaning or the main idea of this cartoon? Hey, the League of Nations is stopping world boycotts. Possible. Okay, let's take a look at the other options. The League of Nations hopes to use boycotts to end war. Wow, also a good option. C, belligerent nations wish to be included in the League of Nations. Eliminate this option. War is likely if the League of Nations acts. Absolutely not. Alright, so let's choose between A and B. So the League of Nations hopes to use the world boycotts to end war. So this is the best option. With just looking at the labels, we will be able to answer it. So don't forget to read all the details of the political cartoon, okay? So that's all from me today. I hope that I was able to help you. And thank you for watching this video. Don't forget to share and subscribe. Thank you. That's it from me, Teacher Marco. Have a nice day.